Who gave you permission to speak? Preston's voice exploded across the ballroom, his face twisted in disbelief as the young black woman in a hotel uniform dared to step onto the stage. All heads turned. Cheng stood under the golden chandelier, calm and composed, microphone in hand. For 2 years, she had swallowed every insult, every condescending glance. But tonight, she wasn't here to serve. She was here to speak. What truth was powerful enough to freeze a billionaire in front of his guests? Why had Chieng endured silent humiliation for so long? And what shocking revelation would leave the entire room speechless? This is more than a story of class and race. It's about dignity, vengeance, and one woman's quiet rise to power. Watch until the end, because every second peels back a secret. Subscribe for more stories that expose the truth, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The glass doors of the Grand Marlowe Hotel slid open with a whisper, letting in the sharp scent of early autumn and the muted hum of New York's traffic. Chieng adjusted the stiff collar of her uniform, her fingers brushing against the frayed stitching at the seam. A subtle reminder that she didn't belong here, at least not in the way everyone thought. The lobby glittered in gold and marble, a sterile sort of beauty designed to impress, not to welcome. She walked past the concierge desk, head high, posture straight, though her shoulders ached from the weight of silence she'd carried for nearly 2 years. The world moved fast around her, yet inside, everything slowed to the dull rhythm of endurance. She clocked in with a short nod to Maria, who was already wiping down the counter in the lounge. Maria smiled with her usual tired warmth, but her eyes flicked downward, catching the bruised edge of Chieng's wrist from the tray that had slipped the night before. "You should have told them it was cracked," she muttered, not stopping her motion. Chieng only gave a tight smile. Words were luxury. Silence was strategy. Mid-morning brought the arrival of the Ashfords. Their convoy of black SUVs cut through the hotel entrance like a presidential motorcade. Staff stiffened, managers scrambled, and Chieng, carrying a tray of fresh towels, found herself standing near the elevator just as Preston Ashford stepped out, flanked by his family. He didn't see people, he assessed assets. His gaze skimmed over Chieng, as if she were a scuff on polished leather. Catherine Ashford followed, her expression unreadable behind oversized sunglasses, while Bryce strolled like he owned the floor, filming a half-hearted vlog. Only Charlotte hesitated, her eyes meeting Chieng's for a second longer than expected. Not pity, not sympathy, just curiosity. That alone made Chieng's stomach tighten. Preston's voice cut through the air as he addressed the manager without so much as glancing at the staff nearby. "I want the penthouse spotless. No distractions. I don't want some third-world charity case handling my wife's things." Laughter followed. Not loud, but enough. Chieng didn't flinch. Her fingers tightened around the tray, knuckles white beneath the weight. He didn't know who she was. That made it easier, and somehow worse. Back in the service corridor, Chieng leaned against the wall, counting her breaths like seconds in a war. The same war every day, eyes that avoided hers, mouths that smiled, but only from the neck up. The uniform on her back made her invisible, but the skin underneath made her a target. Still, she endured. Not for their approval, but for the promise sealed in her grandmother's will. 2 years of silence in exchange for ownership. Real power did not announce itself. It waited. Later that afternoon, Chieng was sent to deliver a silver platter of pastries to the Ashford suite. She moved through the hallway with quiet precision, every step a practiced echo. When she knocked, the door opened to Bryce filming some half-scripted prank, and the camera turned instantly on her. "Smile," he said mockingly. "You're finally on camera doing something useful." Chieng said nothing. She placed the tray down, nodded once, and left, her spine burning with humiliation. In the break room, Maria slid a coffee across the table toward her. "They're worse than the tabloids say," she whispered. Chieng stared at the swirling cream in her cup, saying nothing. Her silence wasn't fear, it was armor. Words spoken in anger were like weapons that left a lasting impression. She needed to stay clean. That evening, as the hotel prepared for the gala, Charlotte slipped away from her family and wandered toward the kitchen. She watched Chieng fold linen napkins with precise movements. "Do you ever get tired of people telling you who you are?" she asked. Chieng didn't look up. "No one can tell you who you are if you already know," she replied. Charlotte nodded slowly, her thoughts unreadable. She didn't say more, but she lingered long enough to make Chieng wonder whose side she would be on when things fell apart. The morning after the Ashfords arrived, the air in the Grand Marlowe had shifted. Staff walked a little faster, spoke a little softer, as though afraid even the marble walls could report them. Preston had already complained about the temperature of the penthouse, the wine selection, and the scent of the hallway, each criticism punctuated with a disdainful glance toward the staff, particularly Chieng. She had grown used to the cold, veiled remarks of the privileged, but Preston's contempt was explicit. He saw her as part of the furniture, something to be ordered, moved, or discarded. That afternoon she was assigned to refresh the penthouse suite. As she stepped inside, the scent of designer cologne and polished wood wrapped around her. The curtains had been half drawn, letting in beams of light that sliced the room into sharp contrasts. Preston stood by the minibar, swirling a glass of something amber, eyes fixed on her like a predator deciding whether to pounce. Without turning, he spoke. "Be careful. Some of us actually paid for what's in this room." Chieng kept her gaze steady, though her pulse quickened. She folded fresh towels with deliberate calm, refusing to react. Power fed on reaction. She would not serve him that too. As she moved to the bedroom, Catherine brushed past her, draped in silk, reeking of perfume and quiet cruelty. She didn't speak, but pulled her designer handbag closer, as if Chieng's touch might tarnish it. Bryce, meanwhile, filmed himself trying on expensive watches, narrating in a bored voice about how commoners could never understand real wealth. His phone turned toward Chieng briefly. "See this? She probably thinks this costs more than her yearly wage." He laughed. Chieng didn't flinch. Her silence was not submission. It was preparation. Downstairs in the staff hall, Maria listened with tight lips as Chieng recounted the moment in low tones. "They push until they break you," Maria warned, drying a plate with too much force. "But you're not built to break." Chieng offered no reply. She wasn't sure if she was built to endure or built to explode. The line between the two blurred more each day. Late that night, Chieng sat alone in the garden behind the hotel, surrounded by hedges cut into perfect symmetry. The moonlight painted silver across her hands. She took out the old letter from her grandmother, its folds worn thin, the ink faded but legible. 2 years. 2 years of silence. 2 years of watching, learning, waiting. If she walked away now, the inheritance and everything it symbolized would vanish. If she stayed, she had to watch men like Preston spit on everything she was. She folded the letter and placed it against her chest. Her silence was not cowardice. It was war. The following morning, an emergency meeting was called. Preston had demanded a private butler for the gala. He didn't trust random hands touching his cufflinks or wine glass. Chieng's name was put forward. The general manager hesitated, but Preston insisted. "I want to see how well she can follow orders." The room went quiet. Chieng accepted without blinking. If this were a trap, she would walk into it with her head held high. That evening, during a rehearsal dinner in the ballroom, she stood behind Preston with practiced stillness. Guests laughed, cutlery clinked, and the chandeliers threw fractured light across the tables. At one point, Preston snapped his fingers. "Water, room temperature." Don't mess it up." She poured it precisely, the glass trembling only slightly as she handed it to him. He took a sip, then deliberately spilled a drop onto the tablecloth. "Wrong temperature," he said, smirking. The table laughed. Achieng's fingers curled at her sides. Her heartbeat roared in her ears, but she only bowed and stepped back. As she exited the room, she nearly collided with Charlotte, who had been standing in the shadow of a pillar, unseen. Charlotte looked at her, eyes unreadable. "Why do you let him treat you like that?" she whispered. Achieng paused. "Because people like him think silence means weakness, but it doesn't. It means calculation." Charlotte didn't reply, but something flickered in her expression. Guilt, perhaps, or admiration. Achieng didn't wait to find out. She had linen to press, wine to decant, and battles to prepare for. The Grand Marlowe's ballroom glittered under the weight of expectation. Chandeliers dripped gold across polished marble, while strings of violins weaved through the clink of glasses and orchestrated laughter. Achieng moved between tables like smoke, unseen but ever present, her tray perfectly balanced, her breathing measured. Every step she took was a countdown. Every glance she received was a test. The gala had reached its peak, and the Ashford family, dressed in arrogance and velvet, ruled the center like royalty presiding over a kingdom they didn't earn. Preston was already tipsy, his voice louder with each glass. He threw casual insults like confetti. "This place used to know its standards," he said, waving a dismissive hand at the chandeliers. "Now we let maids parade like they own the carpets." Guests chuckled, most not even realizing the cruelty, others pretending not to care. Achieng passed behind him just in time to hear it. Her jaw locked, but her hands remained steady. Not yet. She spotted Charlotte standing stiffly beside her mother, her face pale, eyes tracking Achieng's every move. Backstage, Maria waited with an envelope. Inside was the legal deed, the final confirmation. Signed. Sealed. Irrevocable. "You don't need their permission," Maria whispered. Achieng didn't respond. She only took the envelope and tucked it into her apron, her fingers trembling once before curling into resolve. The host stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," he called, "please welcome the evening's keynote speaker, Mr. Preston Ashford." Applause erupted. Preston straightened his jacket and swaggered toward the stage with the confidence of a man unaccustomed to consequence. He took the microphone and scanned the crowd, like a predator circling prey. "It's truly inspiring," he began, "to support a place that dares to reach upward, even if it forgets where it came from." He smiled. "I've always believed some people are meant to serve, and others are born to lead." The room echoed with laughter, polished, hollow, obedient. Then came a pause, a shift, a murmur. Achieng stepped forward. She didn't walk quickly, nor did she falter. Each step was deliberate, carved from something ancient and unshakable. The crowd's chatter quieted as she approached the stage, not because they recognized her, but because they didn't know what was happening. Preston turned, confused at first, then visibly annoyed. "Who gave you permission to come up here?" he snapped, voice amplified across the room. Achieng took the mic without hesitation. Her voice was soft at first, but sharp. "You did, Mr. Ashford. Every insult, every order barked without a glance. Every time you reminded me I was beneath you, you gave me the fire to rise." Whispers, stares. Phones slowly lifted, recording. Preston scoffed. "This is not your stage, girl." Achieng lifted the envelope. "It is now." She unfolded the paper, holding it high. "Effective tonight, I am the legal owner of the Grand Marlowe Hotel. Not your maid, not your servant, your host." Gasps spread like sparks. Faces turned toward each other. Some leaned forward, waiting for the twist. Others froze, eyes wide, jaws slack. A voice cut through the silence, measured, official. Mr. Bell, Evelyn Akoth's attorney, stepped forward from the crowd. The transfer of ownership is legal and binding. Ms. Achieng Oluoch was named sole heir by the hotel's founder before her passing. All records are verified and filed. Catherine dropped her glass. Bryce cursed under his breath. Preston took a step back, blinking as though the lights had betrayed him. "You're lying," he spat. "This is fraud, a scam." Achieng didn't flinch. "You mistake quiet for weakness. You mistake skin for status. But I didn't need to shout to own the room. I just had to wait until it was mine." Preston surged forward, red-faced. "This hotel deserves someone respectable, someone who understands class. You don't belong here." Achieng's voice didn't rise. It sliced. "No, you don't. Not anymore." Mr. Bell handed security the legal notice. "Mr. Ashford, your access to hotel property is hereby revoked. You are required to vacate the premises by midnight." Security stepped in. Preston stumbled back, eyes darting for allies. But no one followed. Catherine stormed toward the exit, heels clacking in fury. Bryce trailed behind, phone lowered, ego punctured. Only Charlotte stayed. She stepped forward, past guests and shattered egos, stopping before Achieng. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she extended her hand, not in pity, but in respect. "You didn't just earn this," she said. "You endured for it. You built it." Achieng shook her head. "I reclaimed what they tried to bury." The crowd stood silent. Some clapped, hesitant. Others remained frozen. But something had shifted. The hierarchy cracked. The stage, once a pedestal for privilege, has now become a monument to dignity. Somewhere in the corner, music resumed. But it sounded different, like liberation. Achieng stepped down from the stage, not as a maid, but as the woman who reminded a room full of power what real strength looked like. She didn't need applause, only truth. And tonight, the truth had a microphone. The morning after the gala dawned with a quiet that no one expected. The Grand Marlowe, once echoing with the clatter of staff avoiding the Ashfords' eyes, now pulsed with something else entirely. Respect. The staff moved differently, heads higher, steps firmer. Achieng stood at the mezzanine overlooking the lobby, no longer wearing her maid uniform. Her suit was simple but sharp, tailored in deep navy, her posture regal without trying. For the first time in years, her name was spoken with reverence, not whispered with mockery. Preston was gone. He had left without a word, escorted by security, pride shattered like glass underfoot. But his shadow lingered in whispers and in the quiet discomfort of the elite who'd watched his fall and wondered what it meant for them. Achieng understood this wasn't a clean ending. It was a reckoning, still unfolding. The board met in the Rosewood conference room that afternoon, silent as Achieng entered. Her fingers grazed the chair once reserved for Preston, then settled into it. She spoke with clarity, announcing a restructuring of staff policies, raises, education stipends, and anti-discrimination enforcement. No one interrupted. They listened, some out of fear, others out of awe. Mr. Bell sat nearby, watching her with the quiet pride of a man who had waited for justice to bloom. Outside, reporters lingered near the iron gates. The story had spread. Maid inherits luxury hotel, fires racist billionaire. But Achieng ignored the headlines. Her focus was inward. That evening, she visited the employee dining hall, now being refurbished per her orders. Charlotte sat alone at the far end, eyes on her untouched plate. When Achieng joined her, the room stilled. No applause, no silence, just anticipation. Charlotte looked up. "I didn't know how to fight them," she said. Her voice cracked slightly. "But you did." Achieng met her gaze without bitterness. Fighting isn't always loud. Sometimes it's staying, enduring, waiting for the moment they can't ignore you. Charlotte hesitated. Why did you stay so long? Cheng smiled, soft and tired. Because sometimes the only way to burn down a house built on hate is from the inside. Later that week, Cheng watched a training session unfold in the kitchen. Bryce, awkward in an apron, chopped vegetables beside Maria. He muttered something, fumbled, then actually laughed at himself. Not mockingly. Honestly. Catherine walked past the reception and paused, then circled back and mumbled an apology to the woman behind the desk. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't complete. But it was a crack in the wall. Chiang didn't seek redemption from them, but she saw its possibility. She didn't need their transformation, only their awareness. Let them feel the weight they once made her carry. In the weeks that followed, the Grand Marlowe transformed. New staff were hired from overlooked communities. Art by underrepresented artists filled the lobby. Guest satisfaction rose, not because of extravagance, but because the soul of the place had changed. One evening, Cheng stood alone in the ballroom again. The lights were softer. The air didn't hum with entitlement, but with possibility. Maria joined her. Feels different now, she said. It is, Chiang replied, because we stopped surviving and started defining. Maria tilted her head. And Preston. He'll rebuild somewhere else, Chiang answered. But he'll remember the night he lost, not just a hotel, but the illusion that his kind always wins. Chiang stepped up to the very stage where she had reclaimed her voice. The same mic stood there, untouched. She didn't pick it up this time. She didn't need to. The room already knew her story. Thank you for staying with us through Chiang's powerful journey. Her story reminds us that dignity can be buried, but never broken, and that the quietest voices often carry the deepest strength. We'd love to hear what resonated most with you. Was there a moment that struck you deeply? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters here. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder of resilience today. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and never forget the power of your story.